¿Quiénes somos? ¿Quiénes somos? ¿Quiénes somos? ¿Quiénes somos? ¿Quiénes somos? ¿Quiénes somos?
¿Se viene la reforma migratoria o no? Por eso tenemos aquí hoy en día otra vez a nuestro amigo del show, Apolonio Morales, que es nuestro director de CHIRLA de Asuntos Externos. Bienvenido otra vez, Polo.
Muchas gracias, Pedro.
Y la vez pasada que estábamos platicando, sí tocamos un poco el tema de esto de la reforma migratoria, ciudadanía por medio del presupuesto. Y pues bueno, hoy también platicamos de la campaña Sí, Inmigrantes Avanzando, Yes to Immigrants Forward. And well, I wanted us to spend a little bit more time talking about the strategy around this reconciliation, this budget, how we got to this point, and what's at stake, really.
Yeah, definitely. So it's important to go back and cover a little bit of history. And so what we've had over the course of many, many years, we haven't had any immigration reform that is a pro-immigrant piece of legislation since 1986. And so we are long overdue for immigration reform. And so for many, many years, we've been making the case for a broad, inclusive immigration reform. What we've gotten within these past couple of years is we'd advanced the H.R. 6, which is the Dream and Promise Act. We moved forward the Farmworkers Modernization Act, and that's thanks to the UFW Foundation. UFW, folks that have been working on this for many, many years. TPS is included in H.R. 6. So there's some work to be done to pass these bills, and they were passed, and that's exactly what we did. Now, these bills are taken into account, including the Essential Workers Act, which was introduced by Senator Alex Padilla, who's a champion on immigrant rights, who wants to see essential workers who played a key role under this pandemic to be included in a path to citizenship. And there's a larger piece of legislation, the U.S. Citizenship Act, which is being sponsored by Senator Menendez and also being sponsored by Representative Linda Sanchez, who's my representative where I live, to move a broad, inclusive immigration reform. So it includes all these other elements, but it's a much broader bill. So this then becomes the foundation for what we're seeing happening right now. And what we're seeing happening right now is a conversation around reconciliation. And so the Democrats have realized that the only opportunity they can get to pass President Biden's agenda is to get it through reconciliation. Reconciliation simply means that it's a 50% plus one vote that you need to pass any piece of legislation because it is a must-pass bill. It's the budget for fiscal year 2022. You need a simple majority. You don't need 60 votes for a filibuster or any of that kind of stuff. We've seen that song and dance, really derail immigration reform efforts in the past. That's not happening this time. This time, there's an opportunity to take some of these elements of these pieces of legislation that have already been introduced, put them into that reconciliation package, and get it passed with a simple majority.
And the problem in the past, as you mentioned, has been that we haven't been able to secure the 60 votes in the Senate. And so you're saying that with this reconciliation process that has existed for years, that is, you only need 50 votes then, which right now there's 50 Democrat, it's split in half.
Yeah, it's 50-50 in the Senate, and the tiebreaker would be Vice President Kamala Harris, who is a champion on immigrant rights that we've seen here in California. The first time that she won her Senate seat, she came to CHIRLA and had a press conference and thanked the immigrant, the Latino community for getting her to win her Senate seat. So now she's vice president. So she has the president's ear, and she understands from a California perspective how important it means, what it means to pass immigration reform, how it would benefit California, how it would benefit our community here and across the country. And so that 51st vote would be Vice President Kamala Harris. We would need all 50 Democrats to vote in favor, and we're not sure if there's any Republicans that are willing to move this reconciliation budget resolution forward. And so that's going to be key, is will the Republicans also support, or is this going to be a simple partisan effort?
And what are the odds right now looking like in terms of, or rather, how are the votes looking like right now in the Senate, for example, for the Democrats? Does it seem like leadership is confident that they'll get to the 50 votes for something like reconciliation?
It seems like they're confident. So Senator Schumer is whipping the votes and having conversations with a couple of senators that are more moderate Democrats. And so these folks have the opportunity to move forward President Biden's agenda, which includes not just immigration reform for us, but it also includes climate change. It addresses the infrastructure from a human perspective. So preschool, all these things are included.
Voting rights.
Voting rights is also under consideration. All of this has to be able to be drafted up in legislation, and then it has to go through the committees into the Senate. So again, I think we mentioned last time, we have $107 billion, right? That's how much you have in the piggy bank to be able to use for a legalization program. So that's not just for immigration, that's for other programs that would greatly benefit other Americans.
Mm-hmm. And I think the highlight of all this is that immigrants are taken into account, and I'll add to that, are finally taken into account into this process, and that we could actually have something to celebrate, hopefully, in the near future, if we were to be able to win this reconciliation, that it would include immigrants. Have you heard of anything of like some type of immigration relief before added to reconciliation?
I haven't heard. Well, there has been some efforts in the past. If you were a military family and you died in the line of service, and your spouse was not a citizen, there was an attempt to make exceptions for that the Senate parliamentarian, that's another very important person in the Senate, they provided an administrative task to make sure that, is this an economic or budget-related item? And so we have to make the case both to the Senate, but also to the Senate parliamentarian at the end of the day. If she says yes, then we're in the clear, we can move forward with a broad, inclusive program. If not, then we have to keep going and going back and back and back and asking our senators to get as much as we can in this reconciliation bill.
Thank you, Polo. We're going to go ahead and continue this conversation after this brief commercial break.
¿Quiénes somos? ¿Quiénes somos?
Welcome back to CHIRLA TV as we're discussing just this policy around reconciliation, getting immigration reform or citizenship rather in this process. And we want to talk about next, actually what we finished talking about was the parliamentarian, this person in the Senate who is like a referee. They decide to review certain attachments to the budget and they'll give us feedback, and rather give the government, the senators, feedback whether this is possible, whether it should be included in something like this. So let's talk more about this parliamentarian or this referee, Polo.
Yeah, this referee is just that somebody that will decide the fate of millions of people in the United States. And so because there has been precedent in the way that immigration, at least visas or an adjustment of status has been under consideration in the past, the Senate parliamentarian in the past has said, yes, it can be part of the budget. And so this is one of those, we're going to come up with the best idea that we have. We're going to present it to this referee, and that referee is going to say, yes, it meets the standard. It's part of the budget, and we believe that immigrants do, meet the budget, the rules, the way that they've been established, because they contribute to the economy, and there's many, many reasons why, right? They're not just people, but they're people that are contributing to the government and making sure that we all sustain our local economies and our nation in that regard. Mm-hmm. So her decision is going to come about somewhere in mid-September. These conversations are going to be taking place. And so that decision is a decision that can actually be overridden. And so there's a lot of power that the Vice President and President Biden can have, and in the Senate as well, if they don't agree with the decision that she has made. And so we're pushing for no stone left unturned. Every single thought, consideration, any question needs to be fully answered, fully vetted, and present the case to pass immigration reform. We don't want to wait another generation before we take this up again. We want to take it up now. We want to get it passed now.
Yeah, and so some of the things that are, because you mentioned it like if it were a menu of options that y'all are getting ready to present to the parliamentarian if needed. What's the first set of proposals that would come to this person's desk?
So yeah, previously we talked about the history of different bills. And so those bills are the foundation for language that will be included in this legalization program. And so once that language is developed, and we're pushing for the most inclusive possible legislation, once that is determined, the senators will then shop it to the Senate parliamentarian and say, what do you think? And then she'll come back and give a recommendation. And so that's where the language is going to come from. How do folks apply? Who qualifies? You know, all that information. And so what we want to make sure at the end of the day is the best foot forward is going to lead, right? But we have other efforts to make sure that more folks are going to be captured. So that includes registry. And I think in the previous episode, we talked about registry as being super important, because what it does is it's just a statute of limitations in terms of when folks came into the United States, how long they've been here. And we said if you push it back to 2010, 80% of the undocumented would be able to qualify for an adjustment of status. And so if they're not included through these pieces of legislation, then let's look at changing the language in the registry. Because once we do that, then we provide ample opportunity for folks to apply.
Yeah, many folks that are the opposition of this issue of immigration often yell without even thinking what it means, like get back in line or get in line, you know, in terms of legalizing your status. And we often clap back by saying there is no line, you know. And part of this is that if the registry date were to be moved from 72 to 2010 or updated to more recent, then folks would have an option or a line to move forward. And not only that, but there would also be, I believe you mentioned 245I, as a means of folks being able to apply for fixing their status from within the U.S., right? And so that's really what's at stake here. You mentioned a couple of things there, which is the bills that are in place, and now this registry date as the other option as well. Is there like a if all goes wrong option too? Have you all considered something?
Geez, that's, for those of us that have been around for many, many years fighting for immigration reform, we don't even want to think about that. But it's always in our back pocket. And so part of that back pocket conversation is what can the administration do? And so what I want to think about is like, we'll get to that when we cross that bridge. At this point in time, we have to keep our eyes on the prize. We need to pass immigration reform. We need to do it. It's the right thing to do. It's been too long. Our folks deserve no less.
We deserve no less, and we will be right back to continue this awesome conversation here with Polo. Thank you all.
¿Quiénes somos? ¿Quiénes somos?
Regresamos con CHIRLA TV. Estamos platicando sobre la campaña esta para ganar ciudadanía este año y pues qué es lo que pueden hacer en casa para asegurar que sí tengamos algo, una victoria, ¿no? We do have this opportunity to pass citizenship for many millions of immigrants this year, and we want to go ahead and make sure that you play your part just as we're doing our part to ensure that, one, you get informed, that you understand the process, and that you also understand the urgency. And so, Polo, let's go ahead and dive into the advocacy. What can people do from their homes or from their local neighborhoods to ensure that this becomes a reality?
Yeah, so I want to make sure folks understand very clearly when you say, oh, the president is doing nothing on immigration. Well, the opportunity is here. The president is doing something on immigration, and now we have to get it through the finish line. So what can folks do from home? This little device they carry around with them and they check constantly is the strongest tool that they have to advocate for immigration reform. And so you can tweet at your member of Congress. You can, join an event that's taking place nearby. If you're in a different state, there's already organizations that are organizing their way, to have either public events or actions or marches or rallies, whatever it is, to make a lot of noise to be able to pass immigration reform. And so there's plenty of opportunity to get connected, to tell your story, to put up a video and say, we need to pass immigration reform. We need to make sure that is inclusive and broad as possible, that my tío, my tía, my abuela, everybody's included in this, because we don't want anybody left out, because we've seen what happens when you leave people out. For decades, for generations, folks are not able to adjust their status, and they live second-class lives in the United States. So we want to make sure that they get their opportunity and their shot to make sure that they adjust their status and become citizens.
Yeah, and we don't have to go that far to thinking about programs that have fallen short, right? Which is like you just thinking about DACA, for example, that went as far as saying there's protection, but not far enough saying that there's a pathway to legalization, to fixing permanently, which then resulted in the ongoing lawsuits, the Supreme Court stopping folks from applying for the first time to their DACA, limiting renewals, and we still don't have clarity as to what's going to happen to the DACA program after this Supreme Court ruling this year, which is, again, the importance of having something that's a permanent solution. That's what we mean when we say permanent solution, is that once you have your papers, then they're yours. You know, once you have your social, that's yours for life. And that's what really we want to get folks to at that level of security, because only through U.S. citizenship can folks feel safe from being deported. Because even folks who have some type of legal protection, whether it's DACA or temporary or legal permanent residency, we still have that fear of deportation, that can still happen. And so I don't want us to get further distracted into the fear here, but rather about the hope, you know. So for folks that might not be necessarily, you don't have social media, what's the other way that they can get involved to make sure that folks, that we get this done?
Yeah, I would say your feet, marching, rallying, getting the word out is going to be very important. And I think that you have to imagine what it means to have peace of mind, right? When I look at my family members that are undocumented, when I look at my community, the immigrant community in California or even across the country, that weight lifted off of their shoulders is, there's no, I don't think you can even describe it. Because I've seen that happen in my own family. In 1986, when my mom adjusted her status and became a resident and became a citizen, it fundamentally changed our lives. It gave my mom hope and opportunity for, you know, in a way that she felt stuck for many, many years, you know. That's the type of relief that I want for the rest of the country, right? For folks to be able to change their status and get ahead.
That's right. And likewise, you know, this is going to be my first year being able to vote in an election. I'm going to be participating in voting in the governor election. And it's something that I can't really describe, the feeling of being able to be accepted in that way, yeah, through the institution. It's an ongoing identity crisis battle, yeah, when you're an immigrant in the United States and you find certain identities where you kind of like te encobijas, no? You find your comfort in certain locations. But this one is a new one that I began exploring now that this opportunity is here. But we want to give that opportunity to other folks as well. And we can only do that if we win legalization for as many people as possible in this campaign. So stick around. We have one more segment to go over this campaign and what you can do to support its passage. Thank you.
¿Quiénes somos? ¿Quiénes somos?
Regresamos con esta charla con Polo. Estamos platicando sobre qué es lo que puede hacer para asegurar que ganemos ciudadanía para los inmigrantes aquí en Estados Unidos. And so, Polo, if you can remind us of this week of action that's taking place as part of the Yes to Immigrants Forward agenda.
Yeah, so this week, September 13th through the 18th, we are going to be having a series of events happening across California. We are making sure that we are going to have our voices heard. And so this is going to be a critical week, because when Congress comes back and they start having these conversations about who's included, what the legalization program is going to look like, whether the Senate parliamentarian is going to side with the Senate, all of that is going to be taken into consideration. So we want to make sure to lift that up. And so it's going to be very critical, very important to get involved. There's, you know, actions happening in the Antelope Valley, in San Jose, in Orange County, in Los Angeles. They're happening in different high desert area in Coachella. You know, I'm sure I'm missing a few, but there's definitely a lot of events happening, plenty to do to make sure that we are going to win this at the end of the day. So we can't let up. No stone left unturned, as I've said before. We have to get out there and make sure we represent our communities well to get immigration reform.
And the invitation for the folks who live near Los Angeles for September 18th?
Yeah, so at MacArthur Park at 10 a.m. we'll be gathering. We'll be starting to march at around 11. Then we're going to go to Grant Park afterwards. And all of this to say, there's going to be some beautiful testimonies from folks that are going to be directly impacted if we pass immigration reform, how it would fundamentally change their lives. And also, we want to lift up all the folks that have been putting the hard work on this campaign. We started back in September, and we're here now, almost a year later, to make sure that we're going to move immigration reform.
Yeah, so make sure to bring sunscreen, bring your walking shoes and a hat so that you can join us comfortably in this peaceful march and demonstration, show of power, and a show of need as well that this community, we're still here. We still need legalization in these times. And Polo, for the partners out there that perhaps would like to connect with you, how can they get organized? So whether it's people or organizations.
Yeah, we definitely follow CHIRLA through social media. You can reach out to, I have a Twitter account or go to our website. That's usually where you can find everybody's information if you need it. It's important to stay up to date with what's going on. There's a special election happening on September 14th. It's very important for California. There's other ways to connect with one another. It's all related at the end of the day. Progress is sometimes slow and forthcoming. But when there's an opportunity, we have to take it. And we're at that point where we need to make sure our voices are going to be heard at the ballot box and out in the streets.
Yeah, so at the ballot box, you want to be heard. So for those who are eligible to vote in California, September 14th is the last day to cast your vote for this recall election. So make sure to participate in that. And make sure you participate in the Week of Action, whether you're in Southern California, in Inland Empire, Northern California. There's different events that you can actually join us and throwing down. Is there any particular message you would like to give to the community, Polo, before we end this segment?
Yes, we need you. We need you like never before. This is the fight of our lifetime. And if you're an immigrant or you have family members that are undocumented that are directly impacted by this, there is no excuse anymore. This is our shot. We need to move forward collectively, be as loud as we can, and get it done.
Mm-hmm. Well said, Polo, and it's sin miedo al éxito at this point, ir con todo to try to win some type of relief for our communities, our immigrant communities across the country. And hopefully you all can join us again this Week of Action. Thank you so much for your support. Make sure you become a CHIRLA member, donate to the organization, follow us on our different platforms so that you can stay up to date, and say hello every now and then that you saw us out here. And we'll give you a shout out. Just kidding, maybe we won't. But thank you again for tuning in. Take care. We'll see you next Saturday.
¿Quiénes somos? ¿Quiénes somos? ¿Quiénes somos? ¿Quiénes somos? ¿Quiénes somos? ¿Quiénes somos?